This lesson is about how to draw a whale. For this, I'm going to be drawing with my pencil and then tracing over that with some Sharpies. I'm going to be using some watercolor for coloring, and I have just a regular sheet of drawing paper to work on. I'm going to begin on the left side of my paper, and I'm going to create a curving line that comes down. And then I'm going to create a little bump on that curving line. It's going to swing back up with a wiggly top to create the top of my whale. Next, I'm going to draw in the mouth of the whale by extending that bumpy line down just a little bit longer. And then I'm going to draw in a curving line that swoops down and hooks around. Next, I'm going to add in the bottom of the whale by extending the mouth out just a little bit and making a curving line that comes down. It's a little wiggly and it's going to go all the way around, and it's going to stop just a little bit short of that first line that we drew. So now I have the bottom of my whale. Then I can add in the whale's fin by creating a small half circle just a little bit below that mouth line. And then I'm going to create my fin. It's going to be a curving, swooping line on the front side, and the back is going to be another curving line with a little bit of a bump and a rounded tip to make the top of the tail. Then using my eraser, I can erase that line that's in the middle of my fin. Since my fin is now in front of the body, I would no longer be able to see that part of my whale. And now that that fin is in place, I can finish adding in the bottom of the whale by creating a line that goes around the fin. I used a little bump and jump, and it's going to touch back to the bottom of the whale there. And I'm going to make sure I have the spot just a little bit bigger where I first created that curve, just making it a little bit wider because I need to add in the eye here. I'm going to do a small little eye that has a little bit of a hook at the beginning and a rounded line with a little swoop underneath. Add in the little pupil. And then I'm going to create some extra details for the eye just by adding in some small curving lines around it. I'm going to add in a small little top hole for the blowhole of my whale, and then I'm going to move back to the fins. I'm going to use a squiggly line at the top of the fin and a swooping wiggle line for the bottom half of the fin. I'm going to do this again on the other side, connecting that line from before so it now has closed off my whale and I have a fin. Then I can use my Sharpie to outline all these main details on my whale before I start doing details with my smaller Sharpie. I'm going to use my eraser to erase out any extra pencil lines that are peeking out from behind my Sharpie, and then I'll be ready to do some smaller details with my fine point Sharpie. I'm going to add in just some simple details using some curving lines that kind of follow the outside edge of the fin, and then I'm going to add in some squiggly lines that connect from the top of the mouth down to the bottom of the whale. And I like to do some little hatching lines just right behind the eye going back onto the whale's body just for an extra little bit of texture. And I'm going to add in some small dots, some open, some closed, along the top of the whale. I added another little curved line along the top fin, and then I did some more hatching lines as well as on the back of the whale and onto the fin. And on the back fin or the tail, I added in some skinny V lines to create some more texture. And then I moved down to the bottom of the whale and I used my Sharpie to do some stippling, which is adding in some small dots for some additional texture. And this will complete the drawing process of the whale. So once you are done with the drawing, you can then choose how you would like to color it. I'm going to be coloring using some watercolors. I have my watercolor set here. I have some salt to add in some of that watercolor cool texture. And I'm going to begin with a light blue on the top of my whale. And I'm going to blend into that light blue some dark blue as well. The secret to blending with the watercolor is making sure that the watercolor stays wet while you are doing your blends. And if you're wanting to use salt, you want to make sure you're adding that salt on while the watercolor is wet and then letting it sit to dry. I also added in a little bit of some purple into my whale as well and blended that around while the watercolor was still wet. I wanted some light gray coloring on the bottom of the whale, so to do this I used black and a lot of water. I wanted to make sure that I didn't let the black sit too heavy, so a little bit of black can be stretched out with water to create that nice shaded look. I finished up the tail with a little bit of some dark blue to complete my watercolor part of my painting. Then I decided to cut my whale out and glue it onto this sheet of paper that I had made earlier. It's just a sheet of paper that has watercolor on it with some salt and some sprinkles of water that I let sit to dry to create this really cool oceany background. And here is the final look of my whale drawing.